All right. Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have John Solleder. He's 40 years in network marketing, millions of dollars in sales, and he's built four massive organizations. John, we're excited to have you on the hashtag Clockedin podcast. How did Ronald Reagan affect your life?
Ronald Reagan spoke at my college commencement in May of 1983. I started my first business in April 1983. Reagan talked about two things. The first was about the fact that of all the isms, capitalism was not perfect. However, it was the ism that had freed more people than any other.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, he talked about the fact that the then East German people wanted what the West Germans wanted, everything from, hey, I want a two-colored shirt to I want pasta tonight and I want fish tomorrow night and I want sushi the next night. They weren't getting that in East Germany. More than that, they weren't getting the real freedoms, okay, beyond what you could go clothes you can buy and food you could eat. And he talked about that and the fact that the Iron Curtain would eventually fall, which it certainly did, a lot of it because of him, frankly. Second point, though, was even more important to me personally. He talked about mentorship. He talked about the fact that in 1932, he, as a college graduate, went back to be a lifeguard in Illinois, talked to a successful businessman, asked that businessman, how do you become successful in life? That businessman gave him great counsel. He said, Dutch, they used to call him Dutch back then, Dutch, what you do is you find a mentor who can teach you a business you're passionate about. In Reagan's case, it was broadcasting. He became a minor league baseball broadcaster for the Cubs organization. One thing led to another. Somebody heard him and said, hey, give this guy a voice tryout. He wound up out in California. I believe the Westinghouse company had something to do with that as well. And needless to say, got into movies and, one thing led to another, got involved in politics, first with the Actors Union, eventually with the state of California, and became, in my opinion, our greatest president in my lifetime. I don't know if everybody agrees with that or not. Doesn't matter if you do or don't, but he certainly made his mark, needless to say. But that point that Reagan made about mentorship has stayed with me, and I have taught that principle for 42 years around the world, not only here in North America, but to people as diverse as Israelis in Israel. I taught it in Egypt, okay, at one point. I've taught it throughout Europe, parts of Asia, Central America, Latin America. So all over the world, I've talked about mentorship, and the people who understand it and apply some of the things that a mentor can teach them are great. I've had multiple mentors, okay, in different things. I've got some of my health life, I've got some of my business life, I've got some of my spiritual life. Okay, so don't be afraid if you got multiple mentors, but certainly have them and be open to guidance.
Yes, I think that's so important because when we talk about mentorship, we don't realize that it's not just one person can do it all. Because in reality, there's usually a person and they have an area of life that is an expertise, and we can learn from that. And if we allow ourselves to be students, then we can constantly learn. Like I literally had someone who I was a potential client that I was speaking with today, and he was telling me how he wanted to start this new manufacturing business. And I go, what are you going to manufacture? And he's like, I'm going to manufacture these water skis. I go, interesting. I go, why? And he's like, because my team of 10 people need water skis. And I go, what if instead of you trying to manufacture, you just made a list and you just asked everyone, hey, if you're interested in water skis, run a little ad. If you're interested in water skis, sign up for the list and we'll give you an update to see if it's bigger than just your team. And he was like, oh, that's totally a different approach. And through mentorship, that's where you learn and that's where you cut a lot of corners because now you don't have to sit there and go, oh, I made all these partnerships and now I can't sell anything. It's like, hey, let's see if we can just sell off the front and then see what happens. And it expedites everything for people. And people just don't realize that. So, where do you think most people miss on mentorship in business? How do you think, why do you think there's a big like misunderstanding about this?
Well, I think in some cases people don't want to listen to what they don't want to hear.
Yes.
Okay, they've got their own prejudice in terms of what they want. The gentleman you just referred to. Okay, I mean, look, there's a lot of water skis out there, especially in Florida where you live, right? If somebody's already done that brand and they've done it really well, he may want to pivot and go a different direction. Maybe there's a different direction. Like you take snow skiing, for example, they got the long skis and then got the little baby things that people go down the hill a million miles an hour on, right? Somebody came up with that as a concept. So, once again, if I have a prejudice, I want to go have tunnel vision on what I'm doing, and I don't really want guidance, then don't ask for it. You ask for it for a reason, okay? The Old Testament talks about the fact that we always need guidance from people with gray hair. Okay, well, I got the gray hair now, but at the end of the day, do we always want to hear what they have to say? No, but you better at least listen to what people's input is. Doesn't mean you have to buy it 100%, but you better at least hear what they have to say if they're well-meaning, because maybe they're going to make a point and save you a lot of time, money, and energy that you could have been doing something that may have worked a lot better.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's a time cut. It literally cuts the list and it helps you move forward a lot better. So with with skills, when you're thinking about skill acquisition, have you ever, like, was that ever a thought of yours? Because the reason I say that is because I speak with my coaching group, and every quarter we go over a few different things. We go over what were our top three moments, what are some skills that we acquired, and then what are some skills we want to acquire going forward. And the reason I focus on skills is because you could go completely broke, you can go homeless, you could lose your network, you could do everything, but you don't lose your skills. You might have to brush up on them, and a skill might be like riding a bicycle, or it might be selling a car. It might be anything. But I feel like skills are super valuable. So, what do you think about skills, and how do you think about continually growing them?
Well, I go back to 1983. It's kind of like I think there was a book written. I learned everything I had to learn in kindergarten, and for me, 1983 was kindergarten. Because not only did I graduate college, but at the end of the day, I also got it in my own business. I heard Reagan, and then 30 days after I heard Reagan, I heard another guy say these words: "For things to change, you have to change, and for things to get better, you have to get better." It turns out Jim Rohn had written that. I didn't know who Jim Rohn was at that time, but all of a sudden, I realized that I needed to stop making excuses about who my parents were. We were born on the wrong side of the tracks. We came from no wealth. My parents were working people, nothing wrong with that. Dad was an alcoholic, okay, you know what I mean, et cetera, et cetera. But I had to stop blaming my parents, my sisters, my girlfriend at the time, the president, all the other things that I blamed, that most of us blame to some extent, those things and maybe other things in our lives. And I said, I've got to develop me as the brand. Well, if I'm
Yeah.
going to develop me as the brand, what do I need to do? I need to invest in self development, in John's self development at all levels. For example, I started to read books like As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Science of Getting Rich by Waddles, Og Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world. I mean, and on and on and on. I started to invest my time and energy in my development. Now, in addition to that, I needed to work on my writing skills. I needed to work on my speaking skills. I needed to work on all aspects of my game, so to speak. Okay. And because I've been an athlete before, I kind of understood that you can't be one dimensional. You got to work on
Yes.
a multitude of things. You take your strengths, you make them stronger. Take your weaknesses, you spend more time on those things. One of my things that I wasn't good at, believe it or not, you might find this hard to believe, folks, on this interview, but I was really shy. I
Really?
I was a guy who would go to a party. I was in the corner looking at my shoes, or like I had no cell phone in those days. If I had one, I would have been playing with it and checking all my texts and my Facebook and all that stuff, because I was not a person that would go and be very outgoing.
Yes.
So I met Tom Hopkins a couple of years into the process. When I met Hopkins, it was kind of funny. He was coming out of the bathroom. He was doing a seminar that I was at. He's coming out of the bathroom. I'm like, wow, that's him. Well, I literally almost grabbed him. And I was like, Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Hopkins. He says, how can I help you? And we talked for a minute. And he said, what's your biggest challenge? I said, I'm a little shy to talk to people sometimes. I'm a little shy to pick up the phone and call prospects. And he took out a business card. He wrote on the back of it, do what you fear most. And I stuck that in my wallet and I kept it in there. And every time that I was afraid to talk to a prospect or make a call, I looked at what Tom had written on that card and I said, do what you fear most. And all
Yes.
of a sudden I realized, the worst somebody's going to say is no.
Yes, and I think that's such a healthy framework because you start to realize that people sit there and go, I lost that big deal. a, a few months ago, you didn't even have that deal in the pipeline. Like before you even talked to them, that wasn't even a deal. That wasn't even a prospect. That was just a name on a list that you didn't know, and it was scary. It's the consistency of constantly showing up that makes a massive difference where a lot of us struggle. So, with you being 42 years as an entrepreneur, it's not an easy undertaking. It's a long time. So, what I do at Edwards Consulting, we have five pillars. It's mental health, physical health, community service, philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships. So I like checking in with the guest and seeing where they're at today and then what a 10 might look like in those areas. The reason is because the people listening can sit there and go, "Okay, John's interesting. He's got a success, but how's he doing all around? How holistically how's his life feel?" And when you give tips and you don't have to be perfect, no one's perfect, but when we hear your insights, people start to really think about it. So, John, on a mental health note, like how are you feeling on a 1 to 10 today? And maybe a few reasons why.
Today's a 10 mentally. Okay.
Really? Why? What does
Not,
that look like?
not every day is. Okay. But today I start a new adventure.
Tell
And
me.
a new adventure, and this really will also go over to our physical thing, is because I spent many years playing judo, jujitsu, wrestling, powerlifting, this body's been beat up really, really good. I've had so many surgeries on everything imaginable. I won't bore you with all the details, but take my word for it, a lot of pain. So I decided when I was in Costa Rica a couple weeks ago, with the guidance of my good friend Katie down there and her husband Fran, who are dear friends of mine, that I was going to start to do yoga when I got back here. But I had to find the right place. So I found a place called Hot Works, where they heat up the room. And long story short, at 5:15 today, I do my first hot yoga class. And I'm really, really excited about it, Jordan. I got to tell you, I mean, I've done yoga before, not well. I mean, I look like a stiff board. Okay. But at 64, I need to transition from some of the stuff that I was doing, okay, to more stretching. I know I need to stretch more for my health, okay, my mental health, because mental and physical do run hand in hand, frankly. So I'm really enthusiastic about that, and I'm also real happy to be on your show. I mean, you're somebody I admire and love what you're doing. So mentally, it's a really, really good day today.
I love that. And for you, most people, as we were talking about in the pre-call, most people at 64, let alone 24, are embarrassed to try something new. So what should they be thinking if they haven't tried, if they're put in a situation where they're trying something new? Because a lot of the time, people will go, they might try the hot yoga, they might be excited about it, and then they'll be like, "I'm terrible. I should never go back there." But like, how should they really properly be thinking about this?
Well, first of all, you go back to the thing about mentorship. We all start somewhere. Okay.
Yes,
I know I'm not going to be putting my foot to the back of my head. I have no intention. By the way, I asked for the real beginner class that I'll be doing. Okay. So I'll be doing remedial yoga for all you yogi people out there. But that's what I need at this point for this body. Okay. You might be different. You might be 24 and everything else. Okay. So, you got to meet people where they are. And sometimes we got to give ourselves a break to say, hey, there's things in life I do really well. Let me use an analogy. LeBron James is a pretty good athlete, right? I mean, he's a great
of
basketball player.
course.
But if you put LeBron James on skates, I don't think he could play in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
Okay, he'd probably look pretty stupid. Okay, frankly. Okay, put him on the court, he's a beast. Put him on skates, he's never done that. Conversely, okay, take Connor McDavid, probably the best player in the NHL right now. Okay, well, I don't know how Connor McDavid's basketball skills are, but I'm going to guess he hasn't spent a whole lot of time on a basketball court. Now, he's a super great athlete, okay? But at the end of the day, if you put him out there on an NBA court, he's probably not going to do a great job. Point is, if guys at that level would be considered beginners in something else, why would
Yes.
a normal human being like you or I be embarrassed because we can't do something well? We all got to start somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's also really, really important to realize that when you do a new thing, give yourself at least 10 times. And the reason I say 10 times is because you're going to get exponentially better in those first 10 reps, which is like kind of the most exciting time because you will never see progress faster than those first 10 times. Because you might go the first time and be like a 10%. The second time might be like a 25%, then a 40%. You will never make leaps and bounds like you do as beginner. And I think it's so healthy to be a beginner because it gets you in that playful, childish environment where it's like, I got something new. I'm excited, but it's not you going in 100 different directions on stuff. It's just a new activity, which we got to kind of dive into, which I love. For yeah,
Yeah, one other point on, not to interrupt you, sorry, but one other point on that. As we get older, okay, like I'll be 64 next week. You want to be doing new things. You want to be challenging yourself physically, mentally, spiritually. Okay, you get old by not moving the body. Okay, and that just doesn't mean out of this chair. It means in general, moving the mind. Okay, as well. You got to keep doing those things, and you will slow down the aging process, frankly.
yeah, absolutely. And the more exciting stuff you have going on, that's why I started getting when people ask me like what do I want for my birthday or gifts or anything, I'm like experience.
Yeah.
Let's just stack 10 experience because there's only so many material things you can have. Like, and it's like, do we really need another 100 shirts? It's like we already have all the shirts. We already have all the chairs. We already have all the things. And it like once we get out of the materialism and it's more about the experiential, your whole perspective changes. So for you, John, what about physical health? How do you feel? I mean, obviously you're going to the hot yoga, so you're excited about that. But what do you think on a 0 to 10 and like what's maybe yeah.
I would say 8 on physical health. I hurt my back a couple of weeks back. I was actually doing a deadlift and I wound up pulling a muscle in my back. So that's been giving me some trouble. Another reason why I want to start very gradual with yoga because you can't get hurt with yoga too, like anything.
Yeah.
So I've been about an 8. I've been nursing that thing a little bit with some red light therapy and with some other stuff, going to chiropractor and all that. So about an 8 right there. Now I did my regular training this morning, my resistance training this morning. This morning I did a leg workout. Yesterday I did a back and chest workout yesterday. Day before that was an arm workout.
Do
So
you work out mostly consistently, like muscle wise, like lifting weights, kind of?
yeah, resistance training I'm very big on.
Tell me
Uh,
about it.
Not only because of my background athletically, okay, but as we age, there's a lot of studies that show resistance training is more important for somebody my age than it is even for somebody your age. It's important for both. And
Yeah.
as you get older, you want us to keep lifting. You want to keep doing farmers walks, for example, carrying things. Okay. You want to be able to use bands if possible. Okay. If you can't get to the weight room, if you can't get to a weight room at all right, build yourself a gym at home. And what I mean by that is, okay, you can buy some kettlebells cheap, but even if you don't want to do that, go buy a construction site where they're discarding stuff. Pick up some
Yeah.
cinder blocks, for example. Stick them in your driveway. Okay, make a little make home gym that you can lift things. It's really important we lift things as we get older properly. I'm not saying go in and do a 700-pound deadlift or something crazy. I know guys my age that are still doing those numbers, by the way. But they're few and far between, and most of them might have hurt themselves.
Well, the thing I've kind of gotten into with lifting, which is quite interesting, because I was doing marathon running back in the day, like probably a few years back, but I started to move back into lifting just because having that muscle is so important. But you start to realize that it's not so much, hey, you have to be the heaviest lifter in the room. It's, hey, did you push your body? And you can push your body by changing literally one exercise. Like for a while, I was doing the behind the like a regular squat, like where the bar was on my back, and then I just did leg press. You know what you just switch some of these out, or you do them together, or you just do lunges. But whatever it is, the point is that you want your body's anti-fragile. So the more you pressure it, the more pressure you put on it, not saying you go super high weight, but the more pressure you put on it, the more you'll be able to get through a lot of these challenges later in life, and you'll have a better lifestyle.
Jack LaLanne was one of my idols. Still is. Jack passed away a few years ago, but Jack always said two things. He said, nutrition is king, exercise is queen. You put them together, you build a kingdom.
Yes.
Right. So, like, if you eat reasonably well, and you lift, or you do yoga, or you run marathons, or you ride your bike, or you go to the park and you By the way, that's another thing you can do. Go to a park and just find, some stuff you can play with. Go to a kid's playground. You'll find all kinds of stuff you can do push-ups on and pull-ups on, and one arm hangs on. I mean, a lot of stuff you can do. Be creative, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Use your body, and if you can't get to a high-end, expensive gym, okay, you think about the work, for example, that Dan Buettner's done with the Blue Zones. Most
Yes.
people in the Blue Zones, they aren't going to gyms. They're farmers. They're agricultural people. They're getting up early. They're carrying stuff, and they're 100 years old. And it's like they don't know they're 100 years old. They know that the chickens need to eat at 4 a.m., the cows need their water, et cetera, et cetera. And they're out carrying pails and buckets and things, and they're strong as oxes. And we would look here in America and go, oh, that's an old person. Well, they don't know they're an old person. Nobody bothered to tell them, oh, you're
Well, the biggest thing about the blue zones that I found super interesting is that they're always walking up hills.
oh, yeah.
So in America, it's very, I mean, especially in Florida, it's like, where's a hill? But so people have to go on treadmills and they're walking up the treadmill. But like, we've become such a soft society where we literally have to create fake scenarios where it becomes to challenge our body. But in where a lot of these places are in the blue zones, they just deal with it on the day to day. Like they really do, which causes a very interesting dynamic. Now, John, for you, community service philanthropy. This is an area most people go, nah, maybe I like it. I don't know. Where do you put it? How do you think about it?
I'm not good at it. Okay, I'll be honest about it. I'm not as good as I mean, I do tithe in my church. Okay, so I do take care of the financial responsibility. Okay, there are a couple of charities my wife and I do support on a regular basis. So financially, we're good. Where we're not good is time.
Yeah.
I don't volunteer. I used to coach kids in judo a few years back. I stopped doing it at one point, just for a variety of reasons. I just got too busy, honestly, to do it. I was coaching some young underprivileged kids in the weight room a little bit. Once again, they aged out. They graduated high school. I didn't replace them. So I'm not as good as I should be. I'd probably say a 5 because we do give financially. We just don't give the time. The time is just not a luxury that I've been able to give, frankly.
John, people build so much more trust with someone when they hear an authentic answer. So I think it's a real thing where we sit there and go, "Hey, we have the charities we like, but maybe these are in areas of improvement or things that we can look at a little bit differently." So what would a 10 community service wise look like for you, you think?
I would say taking some of the skills that I possess and giving them back, to the community. Whether it's mentoring, young business people, whether it's mentoring, kids that are underprivileged, whether it's mentoring, even mentoring other young entrepreneurs that need guidance. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the one thing in 42 years is, I can tell you my successes, my failures are where I learned everything. The successes were the easy part. It's when
Yeah.
I screwed up or got screwed up because
Yeah.
that could be a long sentence. That I learned the most. Okay, was from the failures. It wasn't the successes. So once again, are there things if somebody says, "Hey, I'm building an XYZ business," that I could say, "Okay, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this?" type of thing. So as the years go by, it's something I want to do a little bit more of at the very least to give back a little bit more to the community.
I love that. Yeah, a super easy way to do that. Two ideas come to mind if you're open to them. One is if you set up a Calendly and leave like 2 slots available completely free of charge, and people can grab the 30-minute slots. So you can do it as like, hey, you got to be this criteria to grab the slot, and then people grab the slot. So that's an easy way to do it, especially with your growing presence and whatnot. I mean, like on YouTube, social media, and all that. Another one is because you create so much content. It'd be quite interesting if you created like a course and then just distributed the course because then you can replicate yourself. And it's not so much your one-on-one time, but it's more the lessons you've gained and then you share those with the others.
Great idea. We will implement some of that because yeah, they need to constantly give back. You know what I mean? It's like I
Well,
touch on
that's the thing. If the discussions aren't happening, people don't think about it.
exactly.
So that's why I appreciate your vulnerability right there because I know most people are like, "No, I'm great. I'm great." And it's like, "Are you? Like, is everyone great?" Like, I'm not the best at it either. Like, I'm really not. Because
Yeah.
we're all going through it and it's a challenging thing and we always think we don't have enough and then by the time we have enough we're like, hey, I'm too tired, man. I don't really need to be helping others. But that's kind of what energizes us, which becomes this very interesting dichotomy. Absolutely. So the last two pillars are relationships, and this could be business, life, personal, however you want to take it. What do you think your relationships are on like a 1 to 10?
On a 1 to 10, my wife and I are 10. We
That's
went,
awesome.
yeah, we went through. Look, we went through very honestly 6 years ago during COVID. We went through some stuff. For about 6 months, we went through some heavy duty stuff that we needed to go through. But we remembered that we loved each other, number one. We remembered, secondly, that when we got married, there were three people involved. Okay, third one being the Lord. Okay, and it was like, okay, where's he in this? Why aren't we talking to him? Why are we yelling at each other? Let's let him. Sometimes we do. And we came out of that stronger. We lost a child together. We had four children, and we lost a baby.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Actually, I think 24 years ago now. And, that made us strong. But what happened 6 years ago probably made us stronger. Okay. Not that I would wish it on anybody, because we went through some really rough times. But we got through them, with counseling, with the grace of God, and also really just being very honest and transparent with each other in terms of, do we stay together? And our kids at that point, they were already, late teenagers. My one daughter was already grown. The other two were late teenagers. So it wouldn't have been like, oh, mom and dad got divorced. It would have been like, oh, mom and dad got divorced. This is America. That's what they do. And not right, but it's not the right way to think. But unfortunately, it's become very contemporary. But point being, it's like, do we stay together because I want to be with you and you want to be with me? We fundamentally had to figure that out. And we did. And now we're great. I mean, we do a lot together. We spend a lot of time together. And we exercise together, we walk together, we pray together, we swim together, we do all kinds of stuff together, and yet she's got her friends that she can go off with. I've got my friends that I can go off with, and we're both comfortable with that. Neither one of us, we're not out doing anything stupid. You know what I mean? Most of the time it's
Yeah.
like lunch here or there, with friends, and we're comfortable with each other having other social groups in our lives that we don't have to be in the middle of. Some people are like, well, I have to go with you. No, I don't. You go with your girlfriends. You go talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'll go with the guys and we'll talk about sports or whatever that you could care less about. Let's have that openness of relationship that we can do that. So that's a 10. My son and I are a 10. My daughters, they're 10s. I mean, we communicate very well. We didn't always. My oldest daughter in particular and I had a challenge with that. My adopted daughter. I adopted her way back. When she was 6 years old, my wife's biological daughter, and we had trouble communicating. Now we don't, and now she even works with us in our business. So we have to communicate sometimes about
And
content and things too.
what do you think was some of the key tips to having these relationships? Because there's definitely people listening right now who are like, I want a better relationship with my family member, whoever it may be. So how do you, like, what are some of the tips and tricks that you utilize for that?
First of all, okay, God gave you 2 ears, one mouth. What does that mean? Twice as much listening, and I love to talk. Okay, I mean, I love to talk, but at the end of the day, you don't have all the answers. You don't know what the other person's feeling or sensing. You got to hear what they have to say. Don't judge people by what they have to say, even if you feel like, wow, they are just inherently wrong about their opinion about me. Okay, hear what they have to say. A lot of times, it's something that you can get past with dialogue. Ronald Reagan, I go back to Reagan and Gorbachev. Reagan and Gorbachev did something in the early 80s that you would have to go back to the 1200s to St. Francis of Assisi, the last time it was probably done.
Oh,
Okay?
really?
St. Francis of Assisi knocked on the door of the Muslim leader who wanted to cut his head off and said, hey, brother, we need to talk. And they averted a war.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan and Garby did the same thing. They
Yeah.
sat down, two human beings, not a Russian and an American, two guys. They sat down and said, where are we the same? And where are we fundamentally different that we have to work through for both of our survival? Well, if they can do that when they could fire weapons and destroy each other's country 500 times or whatever it was, why can't you do that with your kids or your spouse or your next door neighbor? Okay. So there's lessons to be learned from history. And a lot of times we just want to be so dominant that I'm right. Being right is not necessarily getting where you want to be. Sometimes you got to be willing to fall on your sword. And what I found through the years is I'm willing to tell people, hey, look, I am a flawed human being at all levels. Therefore, I screw up. I say the wrong things. I do the wrong things sometimes. Okay. Now, how can I help you?
Yes.
Once you do that, you just knock down so many pillars of stuff that the other person goes, wow, okay, now let's have a real dialogue. And you can get to the end game of what it is that's troubling that person or that they're struggling with, or that you're struggling with, frankly, with them, with the relationship. So that
I
would be
think
my advice. Be honest. Just say, hey, I'm flawed. Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe I did the wrong thing. If so, I really apologize in earnest. How can we help each other?
And yeah, I love that approach because what you're really doing there is just taking a step back. And if you think about most arguments, once I heard this, a total game changer for me. Once I heard about how arguments start, it's blaming the other person. So it'd be like, John, you showed up late for the podcast. And it's like, no, Jordan, you didn't send the Zoom link. I'm just using this as like a fake argument example. But when you show up with the I, so everyone can take this example and they can think about this whenever they want to have a deep discussion with someone, you start off with I. You focus on I. I don't appreciate or I don't feel this way. Or like when you do this, I feel like this. And it's not saying that they're doing something wrong or right or anything. It's just saying that when you say this, I feel a certain way. And you start to realize that when you do the whole I thing, it alleviates blame. And now I think that's a huge, most people don't realize that it's the wording we use constantly makes a big difference. So yeah, you guys,
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, to tell somebody, hey, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Like it doesn't really cost anything. I'm going through something right now. I can't get into specifics, but I did a huge favor for a company. Huge. Got them a
yeah,
huge discount on something. And the company owner has still not said thank you. And it now 10 years ago, I probably just would have called him and confronted him. Now I'm just waiting until I see him in a few weeks and hope that he just says, hey, thank you. Why he hasn't, probably just an oversight. He's a busy guy. I get it. But it's like, I told my son this the other day. We were going to Houston to a friend of ours' wedding. And I said, it costs nothing to say thank you. Like even sometimes I think when I'm in a restaurant and I pay the bill and I tip well, I'm always been at least a 20, 25% tipper, right? And I'm walking out and I say thank you. I'm thinking, I just paid you. Why am I saying thank you? You know why? Because that person didn't spit in my food. Okay. That person did the best job that they could possibly do, right? And sometimes you think, well, why am I thanking you? Because I just paid you, as opposed to, hey, what did it cost me to say? Did it cost me anything to say thank you? It didn't cost me a darn thing. It didn't cost me a red cent. And by
yeah,
maybe that person says next time I'm in that restaurant, you know what? I'm going to take extra special care of that guy because not only does he tip me right, but he actually treats me like a human being, not like I'm just some perfunctory thing that brought him his iced tea, right?
yeah. You're bringing up a really good point, and you start to realize that it's not so much about who the like how we think about it. It's just important for us to realize that we're all humans and we all have flaws and we all make mistakes and it's okay. It's okay. And in regards to the thank you thing, I really like how you're testing out the partner because you're like, I might not do another deal. I might not do another. I mean, if you're not going to be appreciative, why would I do more? You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, there's other people that probably in a similar circumstance would have been sending me at least a thank you, probably honestly a thank you gift. I saved the guy $75,000. Like,
Yeah, and it's like we're all busy and stuff, but like,
it's not
but
worth
you
something.
even say thank you to someone walking across the street who like you say thank you to the cars for stopping, like you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
Let alone
more,
saving.
more, more important than money, frankly. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, let alone no, but my point exactly is like the barrier to thank you is so low. Like it's like come on, it's the thoughtfulness. So John, The last one is spirituality. You mentioned that this can be sometimes involved with church, sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's just however you view spirituality. How do you think you're doing on that? And then what are maybe some tips and tricks?
Can always do better, okay? But I have a first person relationship with Jesus Christ, okay? I mean, I talk to him like I'm talking to you right now, okay? And he doesn't answer me back in the first person, obviously, but he answers me back in things that happen. And I just ask him for grace. I'm not one of those people that prays for success or stuff. I pray for health. I pray that I remain physically, mentally, spiritually healthy. But no, yeah, I have a very good, strong spiritual life. I didn't always. I vacillated like a lot of people do. I went through doubt at one point. Like, come on, I'm praying in the sky here, and like really, come on. And then things happened in my life that affected me in such a way that it was like I knew that he was real. And when you know he's real, it's like, man, it just changes your perspective on everything, including death, by the way. As you get in,
Yeah.
it's just like, hey, you start having friends, almost weekly, somebody else, goes home. And so it changed my perspective on that a great deal. But more than that, I've seen all the miracles that he does every single day, and the miracle he's doing in our country right now. Okay, we're going through a lot of stuff as a country, but we're also going through some healing as a country. People are starting to get back together as Americans and saying, "Hey, you know what? We do have a good thing here. Let's stop vilifying each other. Let's start talking to each other."
Yeah.
So, and not in all cases. I get it. There's a lot of stuff going on, but at the end of the day, that's him, man. That's healing. And
Yeah.
when I think of it from another standpoint, the fact that I'm still walking around at 64, I easily
Yeah.
when I had spondylolisthesis, which was what I was born with. Okay, I was born knock-kneed, pigeon-toed, and I had a disease called spondylolisthesis, where my vertebrae wrapped around my spine like that when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
And I had to go through major corrective surgery and rehab and everything else. I could have wound up a drunk. I could have wound up on drugs. I could have wound up all sorts of things. But through him, it was like, hey, wait a minute, I got a bigger plan for you than that, kid.
Yeah.
I got a good plan for you. Won't always be easy, but I got a good
Yeah.
plan. So yeah, no, I would say a 10 on that. You know what I mean? I'm in his word every single day.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, no, it's important for us to realize like what pulls us in the world and what pulls us away and what keeps us in that proper spirit. Because if we're not in high hopes and we're not in good spirit, then we're not in the right place. So, John, for you, what keeps you so motivated at this age? Because most people are thinking on the retirement front. Most people are like, I just want to chill out. What's keeping you excited and why are you acting the way you do?
Well, first of all, there's two key words in business, I believe, today: pivot and agility. Now, what are they? Think of a pivot like a basketball move, right? If you're faced away from the court, your teammate comes down the court, he throws you the ball, you got to turn around and try to throw it into the net. Okay, that's an example of a pivot athletically. How do you pivot in business? Okay, we had to pivot during COVID. For example, during COVID, I had two books that came out like almost the same time, right? My third version of Moving Up 2020 came out December of 19. And then I had this other totally separate title, totally different topics, Leave Nothing to Chance, that came out in February 2020. I'm supposed to be in 60 cities for my network marketing business. And the dovetail of that, when I'm done speaking, of course, is, hey, buy my new book on Amazon. I got 100 here that I'll sign for you, blah, blah, blah. Well, that went away. So now I got an investment in books. I've got not only investment of money, but investment of time, years to
Yeah.
put things together. And I never planned on writing like 50 books. I don't want to be an author necessarily. It's like I wrote what I wrote because it works, right? It's worked for me
Yeah.
for a massive organization. So it wasn't like I'm going to keep writing 17 more books about the same subject. So anyway, long story short, I had to pivot. How did I pivot? I created a podcast. Okay. The Leaving Nothing to Chance podcast, or John Solleder podcast on YouTube, same show. And we started to develop that, okay, and that started to get the books out, okay. So one thing took care of another. Then about 6 months ago, I got an email one day from a guy named Chris Champion, who you
Yeah.
know, and Chris is in the AI world, And this beautifully written email telling me, how wonderful my show was and blowing all the smoke up my skirt and how he'd love to be a guest on my show. Didn't know right then it was written by AI. Got to
Yeah.
know, found out that that was from AI. Now here I am, an older guy. AI is not something I grew up with, right? I mean, cell
Yeah.
phones aren't something I grew up with.
Yeah.
I started my business, the phone was plugged in the wall. So long story short, this is where the agility comes in. Okay. I get to know Chris. I start to work with AI to develop my podcast, okay, and really put it on steroids, frankly, and get it out all over the world. And that's what we're doing now, not only with my show, but being on people like your show and vice versa. In addition to that, though, I started to learn about AI and I started to implement things from it, okay? For example, not only in the podcast realm, but in terms of my regular business, okay? We're starting to work, for example, with clip farming, okay, putting
Yeah.
together little armies of people to take our product to market with videos, okay. These are all things that came of AI. But here's the biggest one that came so far. Chris introduced me to a girl named Diana in
Yeah.
California. Diana introduced me to a guy named John Hyland. John
Yeah.
Hyland is the publisher of Top Doctor magazine. My
Oh, wow.
marketing business, okay, sells a product that's very, very medical. So it's a result of 50 years of research at McGill University in science. So I have a product that the medical industry likes in network marketing, one of the few things in network marketing that doctors actually like. So long story short, got to know John, wound up getting my company owner on the cover of Top Doctor magazine this month.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
200,000 hits so far to that website.
Wow.
Okay, to read the story about our company. Okay, I'm going to be on the cover of it here in a couple of months. Okay, for some stuff that I'm doing. I've got some of my other doctor colleagues that work with me in that business that'll be on the cover of it. Without AI, none of that happens, Jordan.
Yes.
Got that email from Chris, getting to know Chris, one thing led to another, led to John. Okay, so AI led me to this great business relationship that I now have. And now I'm going to be the co host, by the way, of the Top Doctor podcast. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So, and who knows what other doors are going to be open, right? So
Yeah.
that's sort of what AI has done for me. But the agility has to be, if I had done the normal thing that I'm capable of doing, going, hey, I'm too old to learn this AI stuff. It's so complex. Let me do this. Instead, I did this. Tell me more.
Yes.
Tell me how I can apply it to my business specifically. I do not need to become an electrical engineer or a machine learning engineer. Okay, don't have the brains to do that, frankly. But at the end of the day, I'm going to use those guys to open doors for my businesses around the world. So that's
Yes.
agility of being able to go forward or back and say, I'm willing to accept and adapt things that are very, very contemporary, even though I may not completely understand them, but I'm willing to do that and be agile in my philosophy of how to do business. And that's served me very, very well.
That's incredible. No, it's important to realize that we don't turn off. You know what I mean? That we stay on, that we stay excited, we look forward to opportunities. So, John, where can people learn more about you? Where can they hear about you? Where can they learn about the books?
You get the books on Amazon, okay? This English or Spanish, digital, of course, okay? Moving Up 2020, Leave Nothing to Chance. Those are really for direct selling people, okay? If you sell, if you're in real estate, insurance, car sales, network marketing, those books are for you. You can reach me, johnsolleder.com, SOLLEDER.com. You can send me a text if you use Jordan's name. Do not call me. I will not take your call. Okay. You have to text me. Unfortunately, I get 500 calls a day, and about 400 of them are people I have no desire to talk to. Okay. So just text me that you heard my on the show if you're interested in the side hustle and finding out more about our business at 972-259-0875. And you can also go to our podcast, okay? John Solleder on YouTube or Leave Nothing to Chance. It'll even want to get you there if you want to listen to our show. Jordan's been a guest, by the way. We haven't published his show yet. It's coming up here, I think, in 2 Fridays. So
Okay.
he's been on the other side of the camera from me and a lot of other really interesting folks like Jordan that are just luminaries and doing some terrific stuff. So those are all the places you can find me.
Awesome. Really appreciate it.